Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Mindful Momentum podcast. I'm your host, Robin Todd, and I am here today with JT Galloway. Super excited to have a conversation today, kind of to debrief and kind of talk about our highlights from a conference that we just attended together last week called Construction Working Minds Summit. So before we jump into that, JT, I'd love for you to let everybody know kind of a little bit about you, your passion about the construction industry, and of course we've been colleagues for a while.
Yeah, for a minute.
Just inspired by the work that you do in serving others in the capacity that you do, and of course you're part of our Mindful Momentum tribe as a certified trainer. So tell everybody a little bit about you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that. Yeah, and it's So my name is JT Galloway, and I'm the owner of Co-Culture. And what I do is I go into organizations and I basically help them be a great place to work. I focus on organizational culture and employee well-being. And my passion, the reason why I really started that, was to make positive impacts on people's lives. Right. My goal for my company is to positively affect 1 million lives here in Kansas City. And so it's,
Awesome.
Trying to keep that hometown. I grew up here, right? I grew up in a small town in Peculiar, just a little bit south of Kansas City. And so many of my aunts, uncles, right, cousins are in the construction industry. So whether that's being in a pipe fitters union or whether that's being a mechanic, being an HVAC, my parents owned an HVAC company for years. And I just seem to gravitate towards that, right? Being able to do that. I myself have little to no mechanical hands. I don't have those talents. I did not get those. But I'm very blessed and very honored to be able to serve them and being able to see some of the different struggles that they have. And so what I love about this and what I loved about this conference really was that it had such a high focus on there, but there were also little nuggets and little information in there that kind of showed you not only where we are just, in the US, but also where the construction field is too, and how maybe lagging in some areas, but also even just having this conference, I feel like is a big win.
Absolutely. Well, I was just completely inspired with how many people were in the room at the Westin Hotel. Didn't they say there were like over 500?
Yeah.
All over the country.
Yeah, it was wild because, I'm going in there thinking, oh, well, this is going to be, kind of, I get to see a lot of maybe some of the same faces that I've seen at different, different summits, different events. But here, at the very first table that I sat down, there was someone from Virginia, someone from New York, someone from Texas, and someone from over on the coast, Washington. So I was like, man, how did all of you come to this, right? Come into where we're at. And so it was so cool to see.
Yeah. And kudos to the organizers of the conference. This was only the third annual summit. So it's pretty incredible. And I think it speaks volumes to the interest in this topic, right?
Oh,
and of course, the tagline was scaffolding and scaling, a holistic approach to job site safety. And so there were a lot of people there with that safety role, which makes a lot of sense. And the more and more Nancy Spangler, my colleague, and I talk to organizations, safety is such an important piece of this mental health topic because of the fact that depending on how you are in your mental health really determines whether you can follow those protocols around safety, and not only your own safety, but the people around you, and just it's a dangerous job. Many of these people have, it kind of instills some fear each and every day that they go on the job site, and you just never know. And the person, working next to you, if they're not really present and in a good place, that could be pretty detrimental to the people they're working with. So,
it's funny. I still remember some of my uncles, whenever I would work there, they're like, we're not wearing the hard hats to look pretty. Okay. We're not wearing that, right? Like there's some danger to what they do. And so, to see that, but to, kind of think about that in the realm of mental health, like how are they doing that with maybe kind of their own mental health, right? And what kind of hard hat are they putting on so that they can be present in the moment, so that they can be there? What kind of life vests are they wearing to maybe potentially help others? And so it was just something to think about whenever it's like, you could physically be harming yourself, but also like there's some real triggers and some real dangers about needing to be there and be present.
Well, and I think you may have found this as well. Like everyone's in a different place on this continuum, but the fact that they were in that room, whether they hadn't taken that first step to do anything yet, and they were just kind of looking around and kind of getting that knowledge and inspiration to kind of go back and take that first step, to people who were already really implementing a lot of programs that were really impacting that. But so it was kind of a wide range. Obviously, a little more men than women, I noticed, but still, we were us women were pretty represented. I thought.
Absolutely. Yeah, actually, I think that the percentage, because that slide that they put up there where they were talking about just in the construction industry alone, it's like 90-10 was the gender split. And so I feel like that gender split was a little bit, probably still skewed, right? Still skewed, but a little bit better for at least the attendance for there was there. So yeah.
That's okay. So I love this because I feel like you go to these things and then, you kind of get back into your life and you just kind of keep going. And so I really enjoyed kind of going back. We both have our little binders here where we took our notes in, thanks to Milwaukee. And I was just really enjoying kind of going through my notes and seeing like what stuck out to me. And I thought maybe, we could just share kind of our highlights and kind of takeaways that we walked away with. Certainly, we don't have time to go through all of them because there were plenty. I have to just say, in starting, I loved how it started with the keynote speaker from Dave Moody.
Yeah.
Powerful. He owns a construction company, Washington. Is that right?
Yeah.
I think so. And he really was a dynamic speaker, endearing. He just spoke from the heart, but he was funny, and just his journey. And I think what he really highlighted was the power of childhood trauma. He had a childhood trauma that he just didn't talk about his entire life. And very late in his life, it was like 50s, happened maybe 8 or 9 or 10, and it wasn't until his 50s where it really emerged and rocked his world. And he's now speaking out on that, and I applaud his courage. But I think it served such a great point for people, in that those kinds of things, as much as we as people think that we can just pretend those difficulties didn't happen, we can suppress them for a while, but at some point in our life, they are going to reemerge, and we're going to have to kind of deal with them. And for him, it was, kind of a moment where his world kind of collapsed, and he couldn't figure out why, which again, I think is a great illustration of how our bodies are designed, that, our prefrontal cortex here is thinking, no, I don't need to think about that or ever, get that out in the open. But our body, our other parts of our brain are like, nope. He happened to have a trigger that happened, and it kind of all came flowing out. So anyway, and he was just funny.
Oh man,
Didn't you think so?
Such a dynamic speaker.
Yeah.
Whenever you could tell whenever he was talking about these things, like talking about his life, how much life he lived.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was so incredible to see him just like take a moment, and then something would trigger in his mind. He goes, oh yeah. And then about this, like, it was so not part of his speech that he had practiced. Right. And you can tell that he was just bringing his genuine self to all of us, which was really cool to see.
Yeah. Well, and I also love that he's a leader, right? And I think that, we continue to talk about this. I felt like it was really discussed over and over, is that we need this top-down approach in this industry if we're really going to make a difference in getting our leadership aware, involved, sharing their own stories. That was one thing that another one of my kind of takeaways, and I can't remember if it was somebody at my table or somebody we were talking with. Oh, I think maybe it was somebody at your table, and she said that they had done some videos of their leaders kind of sharing, a moment for them that was difficult and how they kind of worked through it. And again, it just normalizes that conversation, reduces stigma, of course, which continues to be, the things the challenges that we're faced with in this industry. But yeah, I feel like him as a CEO and owner of a very large construction company, he is really being a trailblazer in getting out there and modeling what it looks like to kind of share your story.
Yeah. And And Zoe was her name that was at my table. I remember talking with her
Yeah.
and, just seeing that. And it's those people that, that are the leaders that are taking that first step, right? Because for years, a lot of the times the leaders were the ones that were saying, hey, you got to bury that, go
Yep.
back to work,
Yep.
right? And so it's starting back with them and saying, hey, you know what? Like, this is happening with me. This is what I'm going through. These are the things that I'm struggling with. That all of a sudden, that's so disarming, right? As soon as you see someone else that's
Yep.
like, no, we don't need to be this way. All of a sudden, it makes it to where you can feel all right about it,
Yeah.
right? And so I
Absolutely.
applaud him. I applaud Zoe's company and being able
Yes.
to do all those things. And
Yeah.
it's
I want to go
so,
back and watch that video. She said they were on her
yeah,
website, so I'll have to
yeah,
get that information from you.
yeah,
But, and I think that's so true because what we found in our work is once somebody starts just taking that first step of opening the can, then other people are like, oh, it's okay to talk about this, or I'm not alone, or it's not just me who have, whether it's my family or my kids or my brother or my whoever, it's like, it starts to, just ripple out, right?
yeah,
That authenticity and openness. So, how about one of your nuggets, takeaways? I
yeah,
just kind of shared, Dave Moody has kind of started it off
yeah.
with a bang for me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, mine, we talked a little bit about it too, but one of my, I guess, biggest takeaways whenever I was there was just how far we've come, but not necessarily how far we are, right? Because they're talking about kind of even just, journey of some of the stats that they've started to build up. I mean, they're not that old,
Right.
right? That like they're just starting to have a lot of these, data driven things that we have to be able to say, hey, no, this is pretty big. And so to be in that room with so many different colleagues and so many different people who are interested in this and saying, hey, no, like we know this,
Yeah.
right? And they're taking that first step. They're looking at it. They're saying, hey, by the way, like we need to do something,
Yeah.
right? I really love that because sometimes it's, with me looking at this so many times day in and day out, I think, oh yeah, this is a no-brainer. But then whenever I, talk with owners, I talk with HR specialists, I talk with the CPO and them saying, well, why should we be doing this? Are other people doing that? And just having that baseline conversation of, oh yeah, like this is no longer just something that kind of big organizations are doing. Everybody's looking into it because it's affecting all of us.
Right.
And so that was so affirming for me, right, to be in there and to be among those people. But even, kind of taking that step further was, there's I went to one of these breakouts that they had that was in there, and I really loved it. It was based on data driven results and data driven policies, and to be in there and for them to be saying things like, right now, this is just the workforce in general, right? This isn't just construction, but the workforce in general. Right now, 1 in 6 have a substance abuse disorder. People, right? 1 in 12 are gonna have an opioid, disorder, and to see those and to see that right now, deaths for substance abuse are going up. They're not going down, right?
Heart-wrenching.
And so to see all these things and to know that right now, again, generally, right, you're looking at people are more likely to die of an opioid overdose than have a car crash, than die in a car accident. Something that's so common that people talk about. And so to see those stats and to know that the construction field is even at a much higher likelihood than just the general public, man, again, it's great to see how far we've come right now, right? Because now we're talking about it and we're able to start being able to give resources.
Yeah.
But man, hearing those type of stats, like that gets me fired up. Like, man, we have so much more to do
We have a
still.
lot of work
And
to do. Yeah.
there's a lot of lives that are going to be impacted
Yeah.
if we don't do anything, right? Because that's not just the person who goes through it. That's their family. That's their, their brother, their sister, their lifelong companion. And so, man, it's something that whenever I heard those things, I'm like, I have so much more work to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think, a lot of it was, I felt like there was a heavy emphasis on substance misuse disorder and suicide prevention. And of course, in our work with the mindfulness-based peer support, our hope is that we can start catching people before they get to that point. But I certainly appreciate, just understanding it a little clearer and recognizing how prevalent that is in the industry. I think you probably know about my stepbrother, who was a pipe fitter, and he had substance use disorder, which led him to unfortunately taking 3 lives off of this earth unintentionally, but still, unfortunately. And spent most of his life in prison because of it. So I know it's very real. I know that it's an issue. His was more in the 90s, and I know that they've been working on this a long time, the opioid kind of misuse. What I thought was really interesting too was, and I don't know if you were there for this, there was a Chris Tron who is a director of CPWR. I think it was Thursday afternoon, so you might have
Okay.
already left, but the whole organization, all they do is collect data and research. It was really interesting. I was really impressed. She was very passionate about the science and collecting this data, because data is going to change the needle, right? Really getting these numbers and how to really make a difference. But she was pretty sober too. She's like, this is going to take time. This is going to take a long time. But I think anyway, I mean, I think we're all here for the long haul, you know.
Oh yeah.
But that science and data part of it was great to know that her organization is dedicated to that. Yeah, but anyway, having said that, so what else? There were a couple of other things. One, I felt like there was this highlight of people's lived experiences that was kind of continuous throughout, people sharing their lived experiences. Okay, a small thing that I thought was kind of fun was getting a glimpse. Okay, not having been in that industry, I just really didn't know what a toolbox talk was.
Yeah.
And so it was super fun
Yeah.
to see, okay, what is this actually? They had a little competition with people submitting videos of a toolbox talk, and we got to vote on our favorite. I even took away like a little, a little flyer that had a toolbox talk on it, and then just all the resources around mental health. Was that new to you, or were you really familiar with what toolbox talks were?
So I had done it a couple times with different organizations that I've worked with
Okay.
before, but I will say, being transparent, the quality of their toolbox talk was a little bit higher than what I was used to. I will give them that. They did phenomenal on those,
Yeah.
but being able to see that, and again, that bringing it home to where this person who I work with, right, this person who I know is sitting here telling me about something that obviously they're passionate about, but also something that they care about me. Right? They're saying this because, hey, this can affect you, or it is affecting you right now. And so, like, being able to see that, and it was so, it was not only fun to see, right? Because it's like, hey, we're getting ready to have this competition. Everybody got really into it, right? But also just to see that, and know that there's this whole other medium that's out there that they take and they do it on a regular basis, right? They have something that's going out every month sometimes, and
Sometimes weekly.
yeah, sometimes weekly,
Yeah.
and to say, hey, we're talking about this regularly, and this is what it's going to take to curb those numbers, right?
Well, and I love it because that's your captive audience to planting seeds with people that may not ever engage or notice other things that are being put out, within the organization, but they're there, and so they kind of have to listen, hopefully, and you just never know what's going to resonate with them at whatever point in their life where maybe they need it. And one thing I did love, one of the breakouts I attended was by Dr. Andy Walmsley. He was a clinical psychologist from New Zealand, so of course his accent was enjoyable to listen to. But he just talked about that importance that he's had been in the construction industry and then went and got his degree, and of course, kind of served that population, but just the importance of exposing everyone to this information. And he talked a little bit about a wild card, and I thought this was interesting. And he said that there's wild cards out there who there are no red flags. One of his good friends, he told the story of one of his good friends was, had some hard times, but seemed to be doing really well. Went out and bought a new car, and was just like living life for 2 weeks before he took his own life. And just we don't always get red flags from people. We aren't able to see those things. And so, granted, there's going to be people, if they're determined to do it, it's anything we do and say may or may not make a difference. But there are people that need to hear this information that we might not ever approach, right? Because they don't appear on the outside to look like that they're struggling. So anyway, I love that the whole idea of Toolbox Talks, and thought it was super fun, and just knowing the lots of resources out there. So no need to recreate the wheel. There's lots of things around mental health, and so how can I connect those to people? I know the people I'm working with. I'm certainly going to kind of share those with them. But as we kind of wrap up, anything that else you want to add that was a highlight?
Yeah, I guess to really to everybody is meet them where they're at, right? Like meet your employees where they're at, right? Whether that's with these toolbox talks, being on the job site, right? Being able to go there, because a lot of times they go to these places and then they may not even see their supervisor for a while, right? They may be there, they're there, right? You have this captive audience like you were talking about, but being able to meet them where they're at, not only just physically, but where they're at in this process is so vital, right? Being able to have those conversations of, let's start here and let's talk about this. Well, you may not have anything going on right now, but you also may be in a season of life where this is necessary, right? And so that is just something that for me on the takeaway was being able to have these interventions early and often is so vital, right? It is critical to the success of your entire program and really to your entire workforce.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that there were so many people in that room, in terms of it's not just safety people, it's contractors, it's unions, it's everyone, right? It's this collective initiative and a collective really desire that we all help each other in this space, right? Because that is one of the things that came up is the isolation that happens oftentimes with workers, and certainly we know that's not good for mental health. But yeah, I think together it's definitely going to take a village.
Yeah.
I'm certainly happy to be a part of, trying to help and offer something that can really empower people, to be able to have that conversation, to know kind of what to say, and to be a little uncomfortable in reaching out to those in need, right? Because that's kind of the hardest part. But well, I think that's it. Anything else that we'd...
Really just grateful for the experience, grateful to be there, and
Awesome.
just really thankful to be in this space where we can affect change.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for being here, JT.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Thank you for being here. We are here to empower your journey. Let's continue to grow, stay inspired so that we all can flourish. We'll see you next time.